Genshin Impact's new banner with Furina and Sigewinne is right around the corner, and you can waste a lot of precious Primogems if you're not careful with this one. So, in this banner discussion, we're gonna go over Furina and Sigewinne, what they can do, if they fit your personal account and teams, and whether you should pull for them or not. But not just that, we're of course also going to take a look at their accompanying 4-stars as well as the weapon banner, so you can make the best decision possible for your personal account. So, without further ado, let's get right to it. Starting out with not only one of the best, but probably even the literal best character in the entirety of Genshin Impact right now, Madame Furina herself. Now, if you've seen previous videos of mine, then you know I've already sang Furina's praises up and down all day long, and I will surely not stop in this video right here. Furina is an absolutely awesome character because she's not only a pretty potent off-field damage dealer, but also the single strongest team buffer in the entire game. Let's take a look at what she can do. Furina's skill has 2 modes. In the first mode, she summons 3 sea creatures that will attack nearby enemies but prioritize the one that you're actively attacking right now. These stay on the field even if Furina is being swapped out. If you perform a heavy attack with Furina, you will change the mode, and those 3 sea creatures will turn into one that does not attack the enemies, but therefore heal your current on-field character. You can switch back and forth between the 2 modes as much as you like, but personally I think you will probably only use the damaging version because the damage of it's not the best in the game, but it's pretty high up there, and if you build her right, she can deal quite the damage numbers from off-field. However, there's one thing you need to keep in mind, and that is, when her 3 sea creatures deal damage to enemies, then your entire team, no matter if on or off the field, will lose a portion of their health. So Furina will constantly drain the health of your team, at least down to half of their maximum HP. Now, that might sound a bit bad. I mean, who would want to damage their own team, right? But with Furina, this is actually really good, and the reason why is her elemental burst. When her elemental burst is up, this sort of records how much health the entire team loses or gains in that duration. And the more your entire team's health fluctuates, that means goes down or goes up while the burst is running, the more damage your entire team does, because Furina gives a massive damage bonus to the entire team with that. That is why her skill actually hurting your team is a good thing, because in combination with the burst, this massively increases your entire team's damage output. Now, when it comes to Furina and the value that she provides to your account, I can only repeat what I said when I started with the whole Furina chapter, and that is, Furina, in my opinion, is the literal best character in the game right now because she combines potent off-field damage of the Hydra element, which is very versatile, plus team buffing at the same time, and if you wanted to, you could even use her for a bit of on-field healing, but let's be realistic, you're probably not gonna do that. So yeah, no matter if you're a spender or a complete free-to-play player, Furina will be a huge boost to your account, even if you're still relatively new to the game, and I would absolutely super duper highly advise, if you have any chance, get her. She is amazing. Now, when it comes to artifacts, that's actually pretty simple. Since she's an off-field damage dealer at the same time, Golden Troop is going to be her best in slot, and that's basically it. As for weapons, of course her signature weapon, about we're going to talk here in a second, is the best in slot, but since she has a bit of a problem with energy, the Favonius sword is always a great option, and the Fleuve Cendre Ferryman, which is pretty darn ugly, is still a good option on her though. When it comes to teams, this is actually pretty simple. She's extremely versatile, meaning Hydro kind of sort of goes into everything, right? You compare her with a Dendro team, you compare her with Pyro, you can do a Freeze team with Cryo, you can do whatever you like. However, I should say though that the strongest combination with Furina is pairing her with some sort of healer that can also heal the entire team. Remember, Furina drains the health of the entire team, and if you combine that with a healer that fills up the health of the entire team again, that's the best possible combination, because by that you create this health up and down fluctuation, which increases the damage buff from her ultimate even further, and of course you keep the team healed, so that's pretty good. When it comes to Furina, if you don't hate her, then absolutely go for her. She is awesome. But let's go on to the other 5-star character on this banner, and that would be Sigewinne the Melusine. I just realized that rhymes wasn't intended, but you could leave a like for that anyway. Thank you so much. But no, like seriously, let's talk about Sigewinne now. Sigewinne is a brand new character, so I don't have any hands-on experience just yet. However, when it comes to Sigewinne, and I want to be fair here and not insult her or anything, I think she is in a pretty tough spot. Let's go over her kit. First of all, Sigewinne is also Hydro and she is a healer. With her elemental skill, you hold the button to blow up a Hydro bubble that will then, when fully charged, bounce onto enemies 5 times, and every time that the bubble bounces between those enemies and hits an enemy, Sigewinne will heal the entire team based on her maximum HP. However, she will not heal herself, just the rest of the team, and only on the last bounce before the bubble disappears will she heal herself a bit. Also, she will create 2 source water droplets, and if you pick them up with her, she gains a bond of life that, if you clear it, she gains energy back. Now, in and of itself, this sounds not too bad, right? You have a team-wide healer, which synergizes very well with Furina, who is on the same banner, and they're both Hydro, so you get the Hydro Elemental Resonance. So that would theoretically sound like it's pretty good, right? Well, the problem with Sigewinne is, in my opinion, her on-field time requirement. First of all, that bouncy bubble doesn't seem to last all that long, so the healing interval for the team is pretty restrictive, and also you need to keep her on the field for like 2-3 seconds just to blow up the bubble because the animation takes some time. And when we look at her elemental burst, which is basically the budget version of Neuviette's Kamehameha, this is kind of confusing to me because why would a healer need a burst that deals Hydro damage like a Hydro damage dealer? With all of that combined, her skill taking quite some on-field time and not lasting all that long, as well as her burst being an actually on-field performed damage thing, I kind of have the feeling that Sigewinne either will have to be played alongside a burst DPS that themselves doesn't stay that long on the team, or that she's actually an on-field healer, which seems ridiculous because she would have to deal significant amounts of damage numbers in order to be viable as a, on-field healer. So yeah, that definitely has me a bit concerned. She does also have a passive talent, which sounds pretty interesting, and that is, whenever she uses her skill, she will give a damage bonus to off-field damage dealers every time that they deal damage. Basically what it boils down to is that every off-field attack could potentially be indirectly buffed by Sigewinne by up to 2,800 damage. That is definitely a nice thing and further cements the fact that she kind of seems to be an on-field-ish unit. But at the same time, I don't think it really breaks the game or makes her super duper amazing. Let's go quickly over the weapons, and her best in slot is of course her signature weapon, about which we are also going to talk here in a minute. The Aqua Simulacra, if you have that, because it gives a bit of health and therefore more healing and all that stuff. And of course there's also the 3-star bow. Don't laugh at me, it's still pretty good because it has HP percent substat. Now, let's quickly talk about team combinations with Sigewinne, because I think this is very, very important and you should listen to this closely. Sigewinne is a team-wide healer. And the only scenario that I could personally imagine when you would really need a team-wide healer over just a single unit healer, right, would be if you already have Furina in the team, because Furina drains the health from the team and then you need a team-wide healer to fill that back up. If you don't have Furina, then in general, having a team-wide healer isn't all that much better than running a healer that only heals your on-fielder. So yes, you can pair her with Furina, and I think that is one of her best teams actually. But then at the same time, we have other off-field healers who, in my opinion, do a better job at healing than Sigewinne does. What that means for you and your personal account is, if you don't have Furina, then definitely, absolutely do not go for Sigewinne, because then you don't need a team-wide healer. Only if you also go for Furina, or you already have her, and you need a team-wide healer, or you just want to pair the two up, then you can consider going for her, but without Furina, absolutely not at all. But alright, so much for the big 5 stars, the stars of the banner. Let's now take a look at the accompanying 4 stars, which would be Noelle, Rosaria, and Gaming. That's definitely quite an odd choice if you ask me. Now, first of all, Noelle is an interesting character, and I think she would actually be pretty good with Furina and therefore kinda sorta has a right to be on that banner. See, in case you don't know who Noelle is an on-field damage dealer kind of-ish, shielder kind of-ish, and also a team-wide healer kind of-ish at the same time. With her skill, she creates a shield, and whenever she deals damage to enemies while the shield is active, she heals the entire team based on her defense. Her burst then kind of supercharges the whole thing, gives her more range, more damage, and Geo infusion, but I don't want to talk all that much about her kit because there's tons of info on that out there already. The only thing that I do want to say about Noelle is that given the fact that she can theoretically heal the entire team, she would be a great pair with Furina. You could play Noelle as the on-field damage dealer and healer and shielder at the same time, have Furina off-field, buffing up the team and doing off-field damage with her 3 sea creatures, and that really is a match made in heaven. The only problem that she has is that her skill, like her shield, only has a 12-second duration, and once that's broken or gone, you will not heal the team anymore when you deal damage with her. And the cooldown of this is 24 seconds. So that is quite a long time. And if you want to go for her as an on-fielder, you should bring teammates that have a bit of on-field time themselves. For example, someone like Yaemiko or maybe Raiden/Alhaitham as a burst DPS, just so that they can fill the time until Noelle's shield is off cooldown. But yeah, all in all, Noelle is kind of a good combination with Furina, and if you like her, then hey, even better. The next one would be Rosaria, who is a cryo off-field damage dealer. And given that both Furina and Sigewinne are Hydra units, that definitely makes her good if you want to build a cryo team around the two. Now, her skill is mainly used to deal a bit of cryo damage and battery her ultimate, but if you manage to backstab an enemy with it, you get a crit rate buff, so that is pretty nice. However, the main thing about her kit is her ultimate, which creates an AoE that deals cryo damage over time every 2 seconds to nearby enemies. This is a great source of off-field cryo application for all types of cryo teams, and it doesn't have internal cooldown, meaning whenever it triggers one of those cryo AoE waves, it can create an elemental reaction. So yeah, if you want to build a physical damage team with superconduct, or you want to make a freeze or a melt team, one of the best off-field options. However, the problem here is, and speaking purely in terms of meta right now, that freeze is kinda sorta not that meta anymore, and we don't really play it nowadays when we're going for pure damage and pure account performance, so it kind of fell off a little bit. I would say that Rosaria suffers from the same fate that a lot of other cryo characters suffer from, and that is that the character itself is not that bad actually, but the reactions they can create and the teams simply can't keep up anymore with what is meta at this very moment. And finally, we have Gaming, who is a relatively new character, so I'm surprised we're getting a rerun already, but he is definitely an interesting one. Gaming is an on-field pyro DPS, and he mainly focuses on dealing plunge attacks. With his skill, he creates one of those plunge attacks, and he deals pyro damage only on plunge attacks, not on his normal attacks, so you need that if you want to go for any type of a reaction. And then his burst allows him to constantly reset the cooldown of his skills, meaning as long as that's on, you can chain those plunge attacks and deal even more pyro damage. And the good thing here is that, just like Rosaria, also for Gaming, these plunges don't have internal cooldown, so each and every plunge can trigger a reaction, which makes him specifically great, maybe even together with Rosaria, in a melt team, where you do the big melt, not the reverse melt, because it doesn't have internal cooldown, so you would apply the cryo with Rosaria, and then plunge with Pyro with Gaming, getting that fat 2x damage multiplier. So yeah, Gaming definitely is relatively strong for a 4-star DPS, but on the other hand, he is still quote-unquote just a 4-star DPS. And compared with Arlecchino, or compared with Hu Tao, or other really good on-field pyro units that are 5-star, of course his damage can't keep up. However, one thing I should say is that if you get him maybe even on C6, his C6 is really powerful, then he is definitely able to outpace a, for example, C0 Diluc as an on-field DPS. I would say definitely don't pull on the banner to get Gaming. In fact, don't pull on the banner for any of those 4-stars. They're not that good that you should consider that. But in the case that you're in need of a pyro on-fielder and you don't have anyone else, then hey, maybe you get lucky and get the Gaming with some constellations on the side when pulling for one of these two. And before we wrap it up for today, let's also talk about the weapon banner, because you're probably interested in whether it is worth it to go for that or rather not. Well, to make it very simple and explain it in razor words, don't pull on the weapon banner. Like, seriously. Sigewinne's signature weapon, the Silvershower Heartstrings, is really specific just for Sigewinne, and other characters can't really do anything with it. It does have an HP substat, so it's maybe okay for Yelan, but the effect, even though it rates really good at first, is really cheeky. Here's what I mean. The bow can give you up to 3 stacks of its specific effect, and the more stacks you have, the more you increase your maximum HP, so that's pretty good. However, once you manage to get 3 stacks at the same time, your burst crit rate will be increased by a massive 28%. So that sounds really awesome for Yelan, right? Well, here's the problem. 1 stack can be gained by using an elemental skill. Yelan can do that. 1 stack can be gained when you gain Bond of Life. That's already pretty difficult for Yelan, and 1 stack can only be gained when performing healing. So Yelan objectively cannot do that, meaning that big juicy crit rate increase is basically limited to just Sigewinne alone using that bow, and other characters cannot do that. So yeah, in my opinion, Silvershower Heartstrings, really specific bow only really works on 1 character, and that character probably isn't even that good, so definite skip in my opinion. And then the Splendor of Tranquil Waters, Furina's signature weapon, well, that is actually a pretty good weapon. However, when it comes to vertically investing into Furina, I would first go for C1 and 2, and only after that consider getting her weapon, because the constellations just generally give her a bit more performance. As for the weapon itself, it's actually not only good on Furina, but on any sword character that you would put in a Furina team, because it gives massive crit damage as a second stat, and whenever the wielder of the sword has their HP increased or decreased, not just Furina herself, but like anyone to whom that happens, their elemental skill damage is increased and also their max HP. The 4-star weapons though are kind of mid. You know, the Sacrificial Bow is okay, the Lion's Roar and the Favonius Codex and Lance are all good weapons, like good, but nothing more than good. And the Lithic Blade is very meh because it has to be a Leeway team to get the maximum bonus, and that's pretty restrictive. So yeah, this weapon banner is a Primogem trap, and if you want to vertically invest into Furina, I would maybe even suggest not doing it on this banner at all, and maybe waiting for her next rerun, hoping that we're gonna get better 4-star characters with her, or at least better weapons on her weapon banner. And by the way, if you want to know even more about Sigewinne and Furina, then also don't miss my full banner review on the entirety of 4.7 that I put out like 3 weeks ago, right here. We see each other, hopefully in the next one. Good luck on the polls, and as always, travel smart.